Hi, everyone. Our aim for today is how can we draft our personal statements? Your do now is after someone reads your personal statement, what are three adjectives you want the reader to use to describe you? Write them down. So I want you to take a few minutes on a piece of paper. What are three words that you want the person who reads your essay to use to describe you? How do you want to be described? Pause the video and answer the do now. We're going to now talk about characterization in your magnet, pivot, and glow, and look at different examples. As we look at different examples, I want you to think, how is this person being characterized? So, for the magnet, as we settled down on our beach blankets for the first beach day of the summer and took out our toys, I heard, "Now listen, kids, don't go far in the water. There are sharks out there. Stay close to the lifeguard." I was half listening as I began to run towards the water. I want you to take a minute, pause the video. What are some words you would use to describe this person? Maybe you said that they're excited. Maybe you said they're youthful. They're excited about running into the water. They're youthful because they're not really paying attention to what anyone's saying and they're just going and they're excited. Now let's look at their pivot. I wake up in the hospital with tubes in my arms. I feel the sharp pain in my leg. Look down and it all comes back to me. I had a huge bite on my leg. Take a minute, pause the video. How would you describe this person based on their pivot? Maybe you said they're shocked. Maybe you said they're frightened. Shocked because they just realized what happened to them, frightened because they don't know what's going to happen next. Now they're glow. I'm standing at the water's edge for the first time since that day, watching the waves come crashing down. I cautiously take a few steps forward, letting my feet become covered by water. I take a deep breath and gradually take a step further into the water. Take a minute, pause the video. How would you characterize this person? Maybe you said they're resilient, they're brave. Maybe they're resilient because they don't let this shark accident, the shark bite stop them. They still get back into the water. They don't let anything hold them down. They're brave because after being bit by a shark, they go back into the water, right? So for your homework, lesson number 5, you did the map it out where you wrote your magnet, your pivot, and your glow. What I want you to do is take a minute and pull up that activity. You're going to work with that activity. And I want you to think of what are three words you would use to describe yourself before the magnet. So reread your magnet. If you didn't know you, what are three words you would use to describe yourself based on what you wrote? Then, what are three words you would use to describe yourself during your pivot? After reading your pivot, what are three words you would use to describe yourself? And what are three words you would use to describe yourself after your glow? Take a minute and characterize yourself based on your magnet, your pivot, and your glow, and jot that down. Pause the video. So, your first step of writing your personal statement is to write your outline for your personal statement. You already have a beginning, middle, and an end to your story, and you did this with the Map It Out worksheet. So now we're going to take those ideas and put them into place and begin drafting your first draft of your personal statement. When we're organizing our personal statement, we're going to put it into different paragraphs. So your first paragraph we're going to say is your magnet. Your next paragraph, context. Then you're going to have a pre-pivot, which is where you're going to introduce your pivot before your pivot. Then you have your pivot, then you're going to reflect, and then you're going to glow. So we're going to go through these different parts of the essay to help you better write it and plan to write it. So the next step, how will you characterize yourself in each section? If we look at this magnet, I carefully placed my list of emergency contacts on the table. I took Mikey and Izzy's hand as we walked to the garage door with their parents. The kids hugged their parents and then we waved goodbye. Bye bye, Mommy, Izzy yelled as the Rossies got into their car and pulled out of the driveway. Take a minute. How would you characterize me based on this magnet? Maybe you say I'm prepared. Maybe you say I'm organized, right? I've got my emergency contact list. I'm taking the kids' hands. I'm walking them to the garage. I'm ready for this babysitting experience. All right. Also, remember your magnet. This magnet puts us in the action, right? There's action and there's also dialogue. So you hear Izzy saying, bye bye, mommy, and there's action. What am I doing? I'm taking the kid's hand, going to the garage, and putting my emergency contact list on the table. The next thing is your context paragraph. You're going to start a reflective paragraph where you contextualize what is happening in your magnet. Make sure to include another characteristic from your list. Keep your paragraphs short and punchy, no more than 2 to 3 sentences for each. Focus on setting the scene in a way that tells us who you are. So we're going to look at an example of a context paragraph. I had just turned 13 and had planned and overplanned for my first babysitting job for my neighbor's 2 kids. My bag was full of games and surprises for the kids to keep them entertained for the next 3 hours. Even though I had known Mikey and Izzy since they were, well, actually babies, I had never been in charge by myself before. Take a minute. How would you characterize me based on this context paragraph? Maybe you say I'm prepared. I'm responsible, maybe a little bit nervous. I'm prepared because I have games for them to be entertained for the next few hours. I had planned for this. I'm responsible because I'm taking care of these 2 young kids. Maybe I'm nervous because I've never been in charge before. This is the first time I'm doing this. Then you're going to introduce your pivot. As you introduce your pivot, think about the words you want to use for your pre-pivot and your pivot. How do you want to be characterized based on your pre-pivot and your pivot? Before we look at an essay, I want to go over a few important writing tips to think about. How do you want to be characterized throughout your personal statement? What do you want to tell the admissions officers about you? Remember, this is your unique opportunity to tell them who you are and show why you are unique and special. For each section of your personal statement, each different paragraph, they should be 2 to 3 sentences. So each sentence really has to be important and a really thought out sentence. When you're writing, show, don't tell. So don't use phrases like I feel or I learned, I realized, I knew. Instead of saying these, show us. Don't just tell us how you felt, show us how you felt. Show us what you learned. When you're writing, use details, dialogue, description throughout. And remember, this is your chance to show your voice. Your essay should sound like you. It shouldn't sound very formal. It shouldn't sound like you're using words that you don't know. This is your chance to tell us, show us who you are, and to sound like yourself. Before we read an example, I want to just quickly review again how this essay that I'm going to read is laid out. So there's a magnet, there's context, then you have your pre-pivot, then you have your pivot, your reflection, and your glow. So let's look at a sample right now. So I carefully placed my list of emergency contacts on the table. I took Mikey and Izzy's hand as we walked to the garage door with the parents. The kids hugged their parents and then we waved goodbye. Bye bye, Mommy, Izzy yelled as the Rosses got into their car and pulled out of the driveway. I had just turned 13 and had planned and overplanned for my first babysitting job for my neighbor's 2 kids. My bag was full of games and surprises for the kids to keep them entertained for the next 3 hours. Even though I had known Mikey and Izzy since they were, well, actually babies, I had never been in charge by myself before. Everything was going according to plan. Mikey, Izzy, and I were playing hide and seek in the house. Izzy and I hid together in the shoe closet at the base of the stairs. Jen, Mikey yelled. Ready not, I coming. Izzy and I giggled at the toddler's cute mistake. I heard Mikey look under the sink in the kitchen. No, Jen, no, Izzy, he yelled. Then I heard him flushing the toilet. Not in potty, he yelled. Then I heard him climbing up the stairs above us. Suddenly, I heard a loud scream and bang. I ran into the kitchen to find Mikey's face covered in blood as he stood with his hand over his forehead. Then he began to cry hysterically. I ran out of the closet, a knot of fear in my stomach. Mikey was sobbing, staring at me, his face dripping with blood. Then Izzy was screaming too. Jen, she screamed, don't let him die. I took a deep breath, ran to him, put a paper towel on his head, and quickly called for help. My first thought was to call 911. But as I took a deep breath, I realized that 911 was a bit extreme. So I called the next best emergency number I knew, my mom. Babysitting is not just fun and games. It's about figuring out what to do in an emergency. I'm grateful to Mickey for falling down the stairs because now I know that in an emergency situation, I can handle almost anything. I foresee myself dealing with lots more scrapes and bruises in the future because, as an educator in training, I imagine that I'll have to deal with a lot of emergencies, both big and small. But after all, I'll be ready. After all, I'm always prepared. So take a minute, look over this, right? I start with my magnet where I draw the readers in to the action. I include inner thinking, action, dialogue, and description. Then context, I explain what's happening in the magnet. I give a little bit of background information about what's going on. Then I set up the pivot, who I am, what's happening, right? Playing hide and seek with the kids, I set that up, what's going on. And then the pivot, the point where you risk something, learn something, grow, or take action, right? This is when Mickey gets hurt. He's covered in blood. He's crying hysterically. How am I going to handle this? It's my moment to do something. Right? And then my reflection, I'm afraid. Izzy's crying, Mikey's sobbing. My first thought is to call 911, right? But I realize that's crazy, so I call my mom instead. I'm reflecting on this experience. And it shows that I think things out before I do it. And then my glow, where I explain what do I want the reader to learn and remember about me, right? I can handle emergency situations and being an educator in training. So if I want to go into education, this is going to be an important thing. I can handle anything. Doesn't matter what it is. So as you begin to outline, use this as your model to how to set up your magnet, your context, your pre-pivot. And remember, each paragraph is only 2 to 3 sentences. It's not long. All right. So you only have in the college essay, personal statement, you only have a few words to say what you wanted, a few words to get your point across, to tell admissions officers about you. So now it's time to begin writing your first draft of your personal statement. Don't worry, this is only the first draft. There's going to be many different drafts. You're going to have time over the next few weeks to edit this, to make corrections, to make changes so that you write the best story that you possibly can to show about what a unique and special person you are. This will then be continued into your senior year. So there you have plenty of time to work on this. You're just getting your first draft right now. So what you're going to do is you're going to hit tab and begin writing your first paragraph, your magnet, all right? And once you're done with your magnet, you're going to move on to your context. You can get rid of these if you'd like and just write it as an essay, or you can keep these to help guide you. This is meant to guide you for your outline as you write. Okay, so once you you're going to spend the time to work on your first draft. This first draft is due on Sunday evening. All right, after you finish your first draft, what you're going to do is you're going to submit it to Story 2. Story 2 is a company that we are working with, and they work on college essays. So what you're going to do, go into your email, you're going to search Story 2, and everyone should have received an email this week or last week from Story 2 inviting them to join. So you're going to click Get Started. And this logs you in to story 2. All right. So if you look on the website, there's different, like if you're confused about different parts, you can find out more information about the personal statement. They have different activities you can work on. A lot of the activities that they have on their website are very similar to the activities that we have done in class. So at this point, you have your essay written. So you're going to go to find your story and you're going to upload your story. So you're going to copy your essay from your draft. So this is my essay. I'm going to copy it here. All right, the format gets a little weird, so maybe you just want to make sure everything is correct before you submit it. You're going to reread it again, make sure you love it, then hit submit for feedback. And you are going to hit send your essay to a Story 2 coach for feedback. You're going to click yes. All right, what this means is that your first round of feedback is going to come from a Story 2 coach. A Story 2 coach reads personal essays as their job. They know what colleges want, and they're going to give you feedback based on what you have written. All right. In our next class, you are going to be using their feedback to make your essay better. So make sure that you submit this to Story 2. It usually takes them about 3 to 5 days to give you your feedback back. So please, on Sunday, when you complete your essay, make sure that you submit your feedback. Another cool thing about this is when you go back to your main page, it saves all of your drafts. So you can go back to them at any point if you'd like. All right, so just a reminder for this Sunday, you are working on your rough draft number 1 for your story of your college essay, and you are submitting it to Story 2. If you have questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Good luck. Bye.